We're back on the Thicc podcast, and ESPN came up with a list of their top 10 quarterbacks a few days ago, made up from the opinions of scouts, experts, NFL owners, people who supposedly know ball, and that list just stinks. But that motivated us to make our own top 10 quarterback list, which is objectively right and far superior to theirs. At least mine is. My co-host, his list is always a little bit wonky. Had Brock Purdy at number 7 last year. We'll pretend that didn't happen. But you prepared a little statement about that list yourself, Tristan. So how would you lay that down on us before we get into things?
I just see a lot of people get upset with Lamar Jackson's ranking on that list or Jalen Hurts' ranking on that list. I personally would have both of them ranked a lot higher when it comes to the quality of quarterback that they are. But I think people need to take into consideration why they wound up where they were, because there was a certain group of people being surveyed. It was executives, it was scouts, coaches, people that evaluate talent and want to bring these players onto their team. That's the perspective that they're giving their ranking for. And there's still a lot of people that prefer the pocket style quarterback or someone who is a pure passer, and they're not going to be as prone to value the elite talent that Lamar Jackson is or what Jalen Hurts can do within the right system. So when you have those guys who aren't necessarily pure pocket passers, you're going to have coaches and executives who prefer a Joe Burrow elite pocket passer over a Lamar Jackson. Or in Jalen Hurts' case, putting him all the way at 9, they're going to prefer more prototypical quarterbacks. So that's why they wound up where they were. It's not, I don't think it's as much a statement on the quality of player that they are or what they've accomplished thus far.
Mind you, this exact same thought process is why the Atlanta Falcons decided to stick with Desmond Ridder as their quarterback a few years ago instead of pursuing Lamar Jackson as a restricted free agent. So I think that thought process is stupid, and if you're still evaluating quarterbacks like that in the year of our Lord 2024, you maybe shouldn't own an NFL team. But
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's why the list wound up the way that it did.
Yeah, the owners are morons. That's why the list wound up the way it did. But jumping right into it, I've got an honorable mention, and since I am wearing the hat and the coat, let's talk about the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott. If it was 2023, he'd definitely be on this list for me. The issue with Dak is we just do not know what he's going to look like, both off that injury, but in a brand new offensive system, surrounded by talent, which, yes, is admittedly better, but still a one-dimensional offense with no running game, uncertainty at left tackle, uncertainty at guard, a real weakness at right tackle, in my opinion. I'm low on Terrence Steele, and with a mediocre to bad head coach. I mean, it's his first year, but come on now.
Let's be generous. He's an unknown.
He's a true unknown. But that paired with his age, paired with his just lack of success in the playoffs outside of the wild card round against really bad playoff teams, I just can't see myself sliding Dak onto this list. And really, it's a fight for one spot. I think the top 9 are pretty set in stone. And that 10 spot, year to year, has a lot of competition. My number 10 statistically eclipsed Dak by a wide margin, even if you were to expand Dak's numbers out through the entire year. But Dak deserves to be on this list most years, but just not this year.
Well, he's a good quarterback, but in recent years, he has been very injured. This past season, he had surgery on his hamstring. So what is he going to look like coming back from that? We've seen him get progressively less mobile as his career has worn on. So I think even more so in 2025, he's not going to be able to scramble nearly as much. You mentioned a lot of uncertainty across the Dallas offensive line. Now, I don't feel comfortable doubting the offensive line too much because they always seem to figure it out to at least a certain degree. But I think his injury is an unknown. He wasn't exactly amazing in the games that he did play in last season. So he's not a top 10 quarterback. I don't think anyone can really put him in the top 10 right now. Over the course of his career, he certainly has been, though.
Well, some people who wear that nice star in their hats might find a way to slide him in there somewhere around that 4th spot. We don't need to get into that particular bastion of our fan base. At number 10, I've got Baker Mayfield, and he just statistically produced at a really high level in 2024. 4,500 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, near the top of the NFL in both those. I believe 2nd in touchdowns, 3rd in yards. And you look at where he was doing it, he certainly benefited from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin being on the field. And the Buccaneers offense did struggle mightily when those guys were off, but I don't want to knock him too much for that, because if you can't produce with Ryan Miller as your wide receiver 1, I don't hold that against you. No offense to friend of the Thicc program, Ryan Miller. But when he had his guys, when he had a legitimate number one option in the NFL, he absolutely fried people. Just throwing bombs consistently in and out. He might not have the finesse or the accuracy of some of the guys lower on this list. He might not be able to do the short stuff at the highest of high levels, but man, he could air that sucker out at a level most people do not give him credit for. He's also a fantastic scrambler. He will just put his shoulder down and run you over. May not have the high-end speed, the burst, the true power of the Allens, Hurts, Lamars, but he is a really effective running quarterback when he has to be. So for those reasons, I got Baker on this list. Obviously, the playoff performance, not special against the Commanders' defense, but what can you do?
I have Baker Mayfield ranked higher, and I'll wax poetically about his statistical performance or what he just accomplished last season in a little bit, but just why I ranked him higher than 10 was because I think something that was significant for Baker Mayfield last season was the jump he took athletically. He looked faster than we've ever seen him. He was juking people out, running people over, had close to 400 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and that became a significant element of his game. He was averaging 6 yards a carry. He certainly isn't a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or anywhere close to that tier of runner at the quarterback position, but he's evolved to a point where the defense has to at least think about it. When they're game planning and watching film, they have to think about the fact he may take off and run for 10 yards here or there. So I think that is a big element why I bumped him up, and it is not just the 41 touchdowns and incredible passing numbers he put up last year.
Clearly somebody who did not watch Baker Mayfield, Oklahoma. The dog has always been there. He's just been chained up until recently, aka up until Roddy White was the team's running back one for the first half of the season. Suddenly in those situations you realize, hey, maybe we need a little something else on the ground.
You mean Rashad White?
Potato. Roddy White.
Don't disrespect Roddy White,
different.
Falcons legend.
Falcons legend. Legend's pushing it, but who's your number?
My number 10 quarterback, which will probably be surprising to a lot of people, is Justin Herbert. Now, I have been a big supporter of his. I have spoken glowingly of him in the past, but at a certain point, he hasn't had a spectacular year in 3 seasons, at least from a statistical perspective, and he had that collapse in the playoffs against the Texans. The Texans were another team that was struggling throughout the entirety of the season. Everyone kind of expected, the Chargers were expected to win that game, and then he just completely wilted through interception after interception and did not show up in the biggest moment. I give him a pass for the Jaguars playoff disaster because I think that was largely more on the defense than that was his fault, and I do expect him to continue to get better with Jim Harbaugh running the show on the offensive side of the ball. I think he will be better in 2025, but when you have 4 interceptions last year, and that is the whole reason everyone was applauding you, and then you go exactly against that in the playoffs and throw your team out of the game, you deserve to be bumped down a little bit. Incredible talent, incredible arm strength, but we need to see him show up more in the clutch moments.
Actually had 3 interceptions in the regular season last year and 4 in the playoff game, so an impressive feat. You're going to make me defend Justin Herbert later in the video. I think 10 is a bit egregious. It's ignoring the forest for the trees, and I don't really need to get too far into that just yet. I'll talk about him in a bit. I certainly agree that he is being wildly overrated by some due to his spectacular athletic ability. He's one of the perfect prototypical pocket passing quarterbacks who can also get out and run, but having him at 4 as some do is just ridiculous. My number 9 is Matthew Stafford, and this is a bit more projection than based off his entire body of work. He's getting up there in age. He is by far the oldest quarterback I've got on today's list. And you could kind of see last year, the arm is diminishing a little bit. The juice is slowly being drained out, and it's making sense why he is year to year. Pair on top of that his considerable injury history and the Rams' offensive line, which I don't think was addressed very well in the offseason. And I can imagine Stafford just getting smoked back there in the pocket, being diminished at some point early in the season, just not being able to fully bounce back for the entire year, and that hindering his production. But one of the best true shotgun pocket passers in the NFL. Can't really use his legs that much anymore, but arm talent still well above average. Surgical at targeting in the middle of the field. I want J.J. McCarthy to grow up to be somebody like Stafford who can just pick apart defenses, find the holes in zones, know exactly where a linebacker and safety are going to miss out on each other, and find his tight ends and his receivers there. Along the sideline can still throw some absolute nukes to Puka Nacua, and has the Super Bowl and playoff pedigree. But I just think he's about to age out of it this season. If it was last season based purely off ability and talent and yada, 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 I'd be inclined to slide him close to 5 or 6, 7, somewhere in that range. But here at 9, given how old he is, feels about right for me.
Yeah, I think for both of us, from a statistical perspective, he's the least impressive quarterback we have on our 2025 list relative to what they did in 2024. The reason I have him higher than you have him on my list is just because when you take out the games that happened early in the season when they suffered all of those injuries, and you look at that stretch when they went 9-2, he threw 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and really helped them claw back, and then was part of that performance against the Eagles, where they were the only team in the playoffs to really give the Eagles a challenge. So I think when you look at Matthew Stafford over his time with the Rams, and certainly last season, he shows up in the biggest moments. In the snow, he put on an absolute show, threw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Eagles. So he shows up in the big moments, in the clutch moments, and heading into this season, you hope the whole team will stay healthy. You can never guarantee that, but they added Devontae Adams to the team. He's got Devontae, Puka Nacua to throw the ball to, Kyron Williams to hand the ball off to, a defensive line that is phenomenal. So I think the Rams are going to be more than fine, and I do have them ranked a little bit higher.
I mean, 400 yards in the snow is 400 yards in the snow. I think the front seven did a lot more in that playoff game to keep it competitive, stop the Eagles from just going out and boat racing them than Matthew Stafford did, but I don't hate the placement wherever you've got him. Assume you don't have him in like 3 or something.
At number 9, I have Jared Goff. Very good quarterback, not an elite quarterback. When things are not going his way, it can spiral completely out of control. That's what happens when you get a game like what happened against the Texans, and he threw 5 interceptions. Luckily for him, the defense took care of business, and they were still able to get out of there with the win. Then you get a game like what happened in the playoffs, where he throws a lot more interceptions, things spiral out of control, and the Commanders beat the Lions. When he's good, he is very solid. He's not the most athletically gifted quarterback, not the most elite talent, but he's very accurate. He has a solid enough arm. He's a good enough decision maker, and he can win at a high level. I also think it is fair to say a degree of his success on the Lions can be attributed to the talent that he's had around him. Playing behind the offensive line he's had on the Lions will help you as a quarterback. The talent he's had in the running back room, the talent he's had at wide receiver, that has aided him in his success, and I think 9 is a very fair placement.
9 is an egregious overrankment. Putting him at 9 and Herbert at 10 is fishing for views at this point. Just because the thing you use to knock Herbert is the exact issue with Goff. He does not show up in the playoffs at all. Even on those Super Bowl runs, he was getting bailed out by penalties, bailed out by Sean McVay, bailed out by his offensive line. Oh man, Goff does not belong on this list. He said a degree of his success in Detroit comes from what's around him and his coaching staff. Yeah, 359 degrees of his success come from what's around him. Top 3 running back, best offensive line football besides maybe the Eagles. Elite wide receiver, elite offensive play caller, which is something Jalen Hurts just did not have with Dennis Allen. He is in the best possible situation for a quarterback to succeed. I could throw for a crispy 3,500 yards in that Lions offense. His 4,600 do not move me. Goff does not belong on this list. He is physically limited. He's not a factor on the ground. His arm is not that special. And putting him on here feels like a little bit of stat watching. It's continuing like, okay, he threw for the second most passing yards. He's got to be on the list. No, he doesn't. He really doesn't. You can leave Goff off this list, man. He does not belong on here. I'm starting to wonder, you've got Baker and Goff on this list. Who did you leave off?
I'm wondering who you included.
You have got it. I'm going to freak out if you left off who I think you left off, but you can't put Goff on here in good conscience. And sickening.
I don't feel bad about it.
You should. At number 8, I've got Herbert, and I flip-flop between him and CJ Stroud, but I'll get into why I put CJ Stroud above when I talk about Stroud at 7. Herbert is tremendously talented, has the ability Stafford does of being able to launch the ball from most arm angles and have it go a long way. Last year, I criticized him for having a low release point. If you look at him in 2024 and compare it to 2023, he has elevated his release point slightly to match his 6'5" frame. What I don't like about Herbert is he does not use his legs as much as he should. There are times the Red Sea parted and he could have taken off the ramp, but he hung in the pocket a little bit longer than he should have and just got smoked as a result of it. He had the second longest time in the pocket of any quarterback in the NFL last season in the regular season. I also don't like how he performed when he got pressured. In games when he had 3 sacks or more given up by his offensive line, they were, I think, 2 and 5. So when he's on the ground, he is not being that successful. When you compare that to guys like Joe Burrow, to Josh Allen, who just avoid sacks, but Patrick Mahomes, who are on the ground a lot with their offensive line issues, they still found a way to succeed in those moments where they were constantly getting sacked. Herbert didn't. Herbert comes apart a little bit. But as I mentioned, when you put him at 10, he is clearly the most physically talented quarterback up in the top bar of this list. Maybe the most physically talented quarterback in the NFL. The mental hang-up really is what holds him back. But based off, oh man, I was not expecting you to go Herbert at 10. That is discombobulated me a little bit. He's not that bad. He can make
10 is not bad.
10 is objectively bad for a guy who's considered consensus top 6.
I'll take the opportunity to say that I think after the top 4, which feels pretty consensus, unless you're a delusional fan of another quarterback who's right on the outside looking in, I think the gap between those guys are a lot smaller. Whoever you have ranked at 11, someone could make a very good argument for him being at 7 or 8.
No, they couldn't. Again, it's the top 4 guys, it's 5 guys after that, and then there's a pretty good tier of separation. You're wrong with that statement.
I disagree.
But Herbert is surgical at processing in the regular season. Can hit the balls over the middle, can hit the long balls. Short stuff is really smooth considering how strong his arm is. Just a phenomenal quarterback. And if he does unlock it in the playoffs, he will jump way up on this list. But he hasn't, so he's here at 8.
Well, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are more physically gifted. I think from passer
Herbert
perspective, you could say that Patrick Mahomes is also more physically gifted.
Nah, it's pretty comparable in terms of physical talent as a passer between Herbert, Allen, and Mahomes. If you want to just attribute the leg stuff to being why Lamar and Allen are better, go for it. I don't think he's fully utilizing his legs. What also worries me about Herbert, he's always banged up, always dealing with an ankle injury, broken ribs, bruised ribs. Are we going to get a full, healthy 17 games of Justin Herbert? Probably not. Yeah, that's my number. Again, you have flummoxed me with 10 because 10's just a terrible placement for Justin Herbert.
It's really not when you look at what other guys have accomplished. At number 8, a player we've mentioned already, I have Baker Mayfield. And the thing that really sold me on placing Baker Mayfield higher this year on my list is the athletic jump he took. We never really saw Baker scramble to this level at any other point in his career. He became a prominent part of the Buccaneers offense from just a running the ball perspective and being a threat in that element of his game. Scrambling, averaged 6 yards a carry, 378 yards on the season, added 41 passing touchdowns on top of it, completed nearly 72% of his passes. So he's done it at a high level passing the ball as a pocket quarterback. The running game has become an added element to his game. And I know I've banged on Justin Herbert and even Jared Goff at 10 and 9 for their lack of playoff success. And the Buccaneers didn't win a playoff game last year. But even in that game, it's not like he played completely atrocious. He had 2 or 3 incompletions, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He just didn't show up in the biggest way, willing the Buccaneers to a victory. So I think the jump that he took athletically and the different dimension he added to his game is something that I think is really impressive, along with what he's accomplished from the pocket.
I think an argument for that is, it's just effective coaching, the best offensive coordinator he's had at any point in his career, which if you're a Jaguars fan, you are definitely making that argument considering that dude's now your head coach. Baker's always been able to scramble like that. They just used him more. Yeah, having him at 8's a little bit high for my blood. Having him above Herbert's a bit rich for me, but you do you. At number 7, I've got CJ Stroud. And this is me kind of hedging my bets here because statistically he is going to produce worse than pretty much everyone I will name on this list and everyone I've already named. He is not going to be that productive in 2025, just given what is around him in terms of the offensive line. It was a bottom 5 unit last year who gave up their best player for future draft capital. And if that draft capital manifests, fine, all well and good. You've replaced the O-line. It looks a little bit better. But that unit's still going to be putrid this season. He is going to be constantly pressured, constantly on his back, and never quite able to sit back and fully work through his reads to the same degree he did while at Ohio State. When you give him the luxury of doing that, he is surgically accurate, can put the ball anywhere on the field, is a dangerous scrambler. People don't give him credit for that in his game. He can get out of the pocket and run past guys at a level no one really expects from a quote-unquote pocket passer. The arm talent is absurd. His connection with Nico Collins is among the best of any quarterback to wide receiver in the NFL, and he's pretty good at navigating those pockets which often get dirty. He doesn't take bad sacks. He throws the ball away. He lives to fight another day, and him being at 7 above Herbert is a testament to that because when you look at Herbert, he falls apart when pressured. Stroud is pressured at a 3-sack or more level every single game and still performed the way he did. The stats don't tell you the full story with him. He is a special player, and eventually Houston will work things out for him, and he will jump into the top 5 conversations, which he was in last year after his sensational rookie season.
CJ Stroud would be an honorable mention for me. I do not have him ranked in my top 10, and it is for a few reasons. You may not be of this opinion, but I think the gap between 7 and 11 or even 12, whatever names you have on the outside just looking in, is a lot smaller than the names we're going to have at the top of this list. So to me, I am not indicting him as much as you are going to perceive this. And the reason I have him outside of my top 10 this year is I don't think he runs nearly as much as he should. And the thing about his rookie year that was so impressive was his lack of interceptions for a rookie. He only threw 5 of them. He was very efficient. Heading into year 2, the interceptions, they started happening all over the place. He went from 5 to 12 interceptions. His accuracy is not quite elite. We see quarterbacks all the time completing over 70% of their passes. It's commonplace now in the NFL with the direction offensive coordinators have gone and the way schemes have gone. He's not a bad passer, but he's sitting lower there. And when we're comparing the elite of the elite, I think that's a slight knock you can have against him. So do I think CJ Stroud is very good? After this season, would I be surprised if he performs at a high level? Nico Collins has 1,600 yards and the Texans have a great year. No, I would not be shocked. I'd probably then have him once again right at 7, 6, or 5. But I think with the interceptions that he threw last year, the lack of success that the Texans offense had, it was the polar opposite of what his rookie season is, and we need to see at least somewhere in between the two to be a top 10 quarterback.
It must be awesome to consume football via Football Reference as your primary source. There is no way you can look at the Houston Texans, a receiving room torn apart. Nico Collins missing time. Tank Dell missing a lot of time. Stephon Diggs gone early in the season. Throwing to absolute jabronis and jamokes behind a terrible offensive line. You can look at that and say, yeah, well, his interception numbers went up. Of course they went up. Of course they went up. He was throwing to no one who could create separation, was trying to cram the ball in tight windows to keep the Texans alive in games, in low-scoring games, in clutch moments, and sometimes it didn't work out. You put him on the Buccaneers. You put him on the Lions. Oh my God, if you put him on the Lions, watch out. He would just set the league on fire. There is no good faith argument you can have for Jared Goff being better than CJ Stroud. There's nothing Jared Goff does particularly better than CJ Stroud, unless you're going to try and tell me, well, he is slightly more disciplined and slightly more accurate, which I don't even fully agree with. Jared Goff has the world in front of him. Guys getting 4 or 5 yards of separation on slants to throw to. Of course, he's going to have a high completion percentage. Stroud is egregiously underplaced if you've got him outside of your top 8, let alone outside of your top 10. You might be doing worse than the NFL executives, man. Where'd the executives put CJ Stroud?
Yeah, in your opinion, the audience is going to agree with me.
No, they're not. No one's going to agree with that. Is this going to be, every week you have this one take which is just so bad I determined, that's going to be the promotional clip we use for TikTok this week. What was the list last week?
The receivers.
Oh yeah, Mon-Ra at 8?
At 7,
At 7, yeah, that was
not egregious.
That's
for the record,
bad.
Executives had him at 6, so I just want to
So the executives actually know a little bit of ball here. Good for the executives.
I had a one worse.
You mean a Mon-Ra?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were talking about Stroud. What do the executives have Stroud?
Not in the top 10.
Yeah, again, non-ball knowers near and far. What can you do?
At 7, I have Matthew Stafford, and I elaborated on why I have him ranked higher already. I think that stretch when the Rams went 9-2, he turned around his season from a statistical perspective. He went from the first few weeks throwing 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions to throwing 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and leading the Rams back to the playoffs. The Rams went from an embarrassing start to the season to not even having to win the last game of the year, and then they were the one team that gave the Eagles a challenge in the playoffs, and Matthew Stafford came back every series in the snow and almost led the Rams to a victory against the team that eventually won the Super Bowl. I think over the course of his career with the Rams, he's been extremely clutch. I think Davante Adams is going to significantly help that offense, and with the Rams, since they're an older team, I think age is always going to be a question mark. Hopefully they're going to be fine on that front, but I think Matthew Stafford is still a top 10 quarterback, and I have him at 7 heading into 2025.
So Matthew Matthew Stafford throws for 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 4 less than CJ Stroud, also fumbled more than Stroud, despite being behind a better offensive line, in what is clearly a far superior system. And you're still giving him the benefit of the doubt as the old man that he is, but leaving Stroud off the list. This is the last time I'm going to talk about CJ, but I don't think you're being overly consistent with your criteria. I already think Stafford belongs in the list, talented player. I think the arm's going to start going a little bit more than you do, which is why I've got him up at 9 as opposed to down here.
Stafford has a rich tapestry of a career when it comes to what he has accomplished. So you don't have to question as much.
No, he doesn't have a rich tapestry. He's got like a quarter of a tapestry, which is rich in Detroit or in Los Angeles.
CJ Stroud play 2 seasons.
Where'd you have him after last? Where'd you have Jaden Daniels on this list?
We haven't gotten to him yet.
You've seen him play 1 season. I guarantee you got him higher. Let's not use the experience.
1 season of excellence. That's
our
our only reference point. So we can only base it on the only reference point.
Okay, man.
There's 2 reference points for CJ Stroud. One's
both are
very solid.
Good.
One wasn't as good.
2024 was very good for CJ Stroud. At number 6, I've got Jaden Daniels. And a lot can be said about Cliff Kingsbury making things easy for him. The 80% completion percentage he was rocking the first few weeks of the season, a little bit Chuck E. Cheese. A lot of stuff came open for him quick near the line of scrimmage. But once he got through that learning period, was eased into the NFL, start airing the ball out more and more, finding TJ McLaurin, finding his tight ends deep, then you saw the true beauty of Jaden Daniels. He can stretch the field, he can hit the short balls, not particularly great at throwing over the middle, but outside the hashes in that mid-range, exceptional stuff. The arm talent is underrated in my opinion. You just gotta look at that Hail Mary against the Bears. You see him just air it out 65, 70 yards in the air. A little bit short of the end zone, but hey, set up a very nice tip drill. You can tell the arm talent is sensational. Running ability, top 5 in the NFL, runs away from people in a way no one but Lamar can, very agile. Still drives me nuts with his refusal to slide at some points, but that doesn't seem to be slowing him down yet, so why would I use it to knock him? Performed very well in the playoffs against a good Buccaneers defense and what should have been a good Lions defense, which was a very well coached Lions defense, which was just devoid of talent by the end because they just got super injured. Got flattened by the Eagles. Big whoop. Everybody got flattened by the Eagles except the Rams. I'd say things are only going to go up. I'm also a believer in the sophomore slump a little bit, so maybe people get some more film on, find some weaknesses in his game. I'm just not seeing him knocking down a little bit. But I got him here at 6. Fantastic rookie season, and I hope he keeps getting better.
Jaden Daniels' sophomore slump is going to be thrown out with him when it's coming to his 2025 season. The Commanders as a team overachieved in 2024, certainly getting all the way to the conference championship team relative to the talent they had on their roster. But I think that's the thing that was so impressive about Jaden Daniels in 2024. It was the fact that he elevated all of the talent around him. His receivers got better. Terry McLaurin had the best year of his career. We saw Noah Brown have a very solid season. Zach Ertz had a great year, even though he is well into his career. So we saw him elevate this Commanders team all the way to a conference championship game, and a lot of people are going to directly compare him to CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud fell off a little bit in his second year, but when you look at their rookie years combined, their passing numbers are very similar to one another. The passing yards, touchdowns, Jaden Daniels does have a few more interceptions, but then when you look at what he'd accomplished on the ground, close to 900 rushing yards, more rushing touchdowns than what CJ Stroud had. He is a more dynamic player than CJ Stroud. He offers you something else on the ground CJ Stroud does not. And I think a reason CJ Stroud's rookie year is potentially slightly overrated was just because the biggest thing about it was his lack of interceptions and touchdown to interception ratio. Jaden Daniels has a more dynamic game, I think a more complete game, and I also agree with you on, it feels like people even underrate how good of a passer he is because of how good on the ground he is, and I have him at 5 instead of 6.
So similar positioning there. R6 and 5 are the same. Let's talk about Jalen Hurts a little bit. And the people who think Jalen Hurts should be a top 3 quarterback are a little bit silly. The people who think he should be down there at 10 are far sillier in my opinion. Everyone talks about what's around him and what Jalen Hurts can't do. Here's what he can do. He is surgically accurate on his first and second read. He is fantastic at throwing long balls to A.J. Brown, assuming Brown creates a little bit of separation. He diagnoses things at the line of scrimmage incredibly well in the regular season. He always gets guys lined up in the right spot prior to the snap. On the ground, top 5 runner, blends the Josh Allen style of just running you over and the Lamar Jackson style of just dancing around you very well, incredibly fast. The cornerstone of the most unstoppable play in football, which will be banned within the next 2 years because no one can do it as well as Jalen Hurts. And he takes all those great characteristics and elevates them in the playoffs. Over the past 3 seasons, he has had 2 of the best quarterback performances of all time in the Super Bowl, one of which resulted in a win. Jalen Hurts is awesome, and the thing which holds him back from being moved up for me, he's not great once he gets off his first or second read, and he does kind of hold the ball a while, which is just not something you can say about the top 4 guys. They all get it out really quick. They can work through their reads better. And Hurts does a lot before the snap to get things in order, but if things come out of order, he's not the best improviser. He can put his shoulder down and run, sure, but he doesn't look as comfortable as the other guys above him out of structure and does not quite have the true nuclear missile of an arm everyone else in this list besides Burrow does.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is the most polarizing quarterback when it comes to rankings. If you're an Eagles fan or you're someone who values team accomplishments above anything else, you probably think he's the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes. If you are a hater of Jalen Hurts, you probably think he's not a top 10 quarterback and obsess on the fact that he has an excellent roster around him and that he maybe isn't the most polished quarterback in the NFL like Isaiah just mentioned. Call me a fence sitter if you want in the comments, but I think it falls in between both of those extremes. At the end of the day, he operates the Eagles system at a very high level. The Super Bowl statistics you mentioned and his performances in both those games were very good. He shows up in the biggest moments. He's good enough as a passer, more than good enough in most cases. He's very solid as a runner. In some cases, I do think his running ability is slightly overrated because I would prefer Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels over him outside of the pocket and running ball, but still very good at that. I think the fact that he's able to execute the tush-push at the level that he does is something that can be viewed as impressive, even if that's maybe more on the offensive line or the guys pushing him from behind. So I think the fact that he has been to 2 Super Bowls over the last 3 seasons, it counts for something. The way he operates the Eagles offense that is wildly talented counts for something. But as you mentioned, I don't think he's necessarily the most polished quarterback in the NFL. And I have him ranked just behind Jaden Daniels because I think Jaden Daniels is more talented and showed more as a passer in just the first year of his career than we've seen Jalen Hurts do thus far.
The criticism that a lot of quarterbacks could have won the Super Bowl with the Eagles this year, at least won the Super Bowl, the actual game, not make it there, is somewhat valid just because of how hard the defense stomped the Chiefs offense. But Hurts performed very well against, by most metrics, was a top 5 defense, which has just been shackling opposing offenses down all year, which I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for. They just look at the numbers. They don't consider who the numbers were against. Also, the elevation of play in the playoffs and the ability to diagnose stuff pre-snap at a really high level is Brady-esque in a way, which is a comparison most people will not make with Jalen Hurts. But he is a very impressive quarterback to me, and I could see myself moving him up before I could see myself moving him down. Maybe Jaden Daniels just has 4,000 yards through the air, 1,000 on the ground to win the Super Bowl next year and shuts me up, but I don't think he's quite on Hurts' level yet.
If you value team accomplishments more, or you or someone else in the comments, you want to put him ahead of Jaden Daniels, I think that's completely fine. I think if you're putting him any lower than 6, I do think that's a little bit crazy because he has now done it twice in the biggest moment. One he lost, one he won.
One he lost, one he won feels like an oversimplification of how he performed. He is one call away from being a two-time Super Bowl champion. If he was that, you would not dare put him anywhere but 4 lower.
Yeah, if his defense actually didn't hold. But.
Yeah, again, no one is saying the call was right or wrong, although 3 NFL referees are now unemployed because of that, but I digress. At number 4, I've got Joe Burrow. And given that he is an average athlete at the quarterback position, he has probably maximized his capability as a passer. Any throw anywhere on the field, outside, over the middle, short, medium, long, behind the line of scrimmage, 70 yards downfield, Joe Burrow can make. He can find the receiver. He can find him on his 3rd, 4th read. He can work through his reads 2 or 3 times and get back to the right guy. He can navigate a dirty pocket better than most, probably because he's got more experience doing it than any of the other guys up near the top of this list. Very clutch, performed well in the 4th quarter. And the one knock you can put on his game, it's not going to be his defense or anything like that. It's going to be the sacks he takes are unnecessary because they cost his team yards and they greatly increase his risk of injury, evidenced by his 2 Comeback Player of the Year awards. I know he says, this is a quote directly from him, yeah, what's the big deal of getting sacked on 3rd down if the play's not going to develop or I'm trying to prolong something and make a play downfield to pick up the first? The issue is it's just another hit on a body which is shown as susceptible to injury. It's putting your punter in a worse position. It's putting your defense in a worse position. And the Bengals defense needs all the help it can get. That, and he's just a one-dimensional athlete in terms of being a one-dimensional quarterback. He is not a good runner of the football. He's giving you pretty much nothing with his legs. Scrambling ability may be a little bit underrated, but there's not much there either.
Well, I think he's underrated as an athlete, actually, evidenced by his 50-yard touchdown run versus the New York Giants last season.
Big deal.
He did get a little busy there.
Yards on the New York Giants.
I think the top 4 quarterbacks are undeniable. Joe Burrow, an elite passer, elite processor, a very good arm strength, elite accuracy. He does everything you want a pocket quarterback to be able to do at an elite level. It's not his fault when it comes to team success that his defense hasn't been there in any way to support him, really. Now, you mentioned he takes too many sacks. I think another criticism we can have of Joe Burrow is that he never starts, or more often than not, has not started off the year that well. In 2022, the Bengals started 2-3, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions over that stretch. In 2023, 1-3 through 4 weeks, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Last year, this past season, opening week, shocking loss to the Patriots. So we never get Joe Burrow right from the jump playing at the Joe Burrow level we have come to expect. So I think it's a small criticism, but I think a valid criticism of his game that he never starts the year off hot. The only time he ever really did that was the year they actually went to the Super Bowl. So I think that's a small criticism, and something else that I used to bump him down from being in the top 3. And I mean, everything you said, I largely agree with. We have him ranked at the same spot.
I think that's more of a Zach Taylor issue than a Joe Burrow issue, because that offense in general doesn't really show up early in the year. And last season in particular, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase both held out for extended periods of time to get a new contract worked out. I don't begrudge Joe Burrow of not being able to get those guys back and immediately have a super smooth offense right out of the gate. So that's a little nitpicky in my opinion, but when you get to the top 3 guys, 4 guys, you kind of got to be nitpicky to differentiate them. Number 3 and number 2 on everyone's list should be Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I've got Lamar at 3 and I've got Josh Allen at 2. Who do you want to talk about first?
We can talk about them pitted against each other if you want.
Again, who do you want to talk about first? Because talking about them pitted against each other feels like just a Johnson measuring contest saying, oh, well, this guy does this, but this guy does the other pair. The criticism of Josh Allen throughout the course of his career was he is too reckless with the ball. He was a gunslinging quarterback at a time where the gunslinging quarterback had largely gone extinct. He was Favrean in a way. Last season, that was not a factor for him. Near the bottom of the NFL in turnover-worthy plays, completely avoided sacks, career lows in interceptions and fumbles lost. Fantastic from a not turning the ball over standpoint. With a limited receiving, how do I say this nicely? A patchwork receiving room, he was able to light the NFL on fire, getting some absolute dogfights against teams like the Rams.
Without a clear number 1 receiver.
Without a clear number 2 receiver, because I don't think on the really high-profile teams, like Khalil Shakir would not be at the number 2 receiver on 5 or 6 teams in the NFL, which is not something you want for.
Well, he was second in the NFL in yards after catch.
Yeah, but he was also kind of a
solid
slot
player.
Receiver. Do you really take him above Devontae Smith, Waddle, T. Higgins,
No.
those type of? Yeah, exactly. There you go. Puka Nacua, no. I mean, come on, man. Let's be real about that. The receiving room was not great. The tight end room, greatly disappointed. Dawson Knox continues to kind of age out. Kincaid just did not play well. You expected a lot more from him in year 2 than what you got. Still, Josh Allen produces offensively at a very high level. Very dynamic on the ground, stylistically hard to stylistically the best power running quarterback we have seen since Cam Newton. Would bowl over people, bowl over safeties, linebackers, would even stiff arm a defensive end occasionally. Best evidenced by his game-winning run against the Chiefs in the regular season. The thing which separates Allen and Lamar from me is one, Allen's arm is clearly better. He is better in a pocket of airing the ball out downfield, making big explosive plays with his arm. And he has actually shown up in the playoffs, which based off your placement of Justin Herbert, I think is important to you, at a much higher level than Lamar Jackson year in and year out. He played fairly well against the Ravens. Maybe you want to make the argument Lamar played better than him despite having 2 turnovers. Played fairly well against the Chiefs, but ran into the best quarterback in football playing one of the best games of his career and lost in that setting. There is nothing I don't think Allen can do besides beat the Chiefs, and really that's a Buffalo Bills issue as opposed to him. There are things I don't think Lamar can do.
Well, when it comes to directly comparing their playoff success, neither one of them has got it all the way done in the playoffs. Neither one of them has been to a Super Bowl.
That is a supremely disingenuous argument, by the way.
And I don't hold it against either of them that the fact they haven't gotten it done because they play in the AFC, which features Patrick Mahomes, more importantly features the Chiefs, which are a dynasty at this point. And I don't hold it against him that he can't beat Mahomes in the playoffs. The same way I don't hold Lamar Jackson's lack of playoff success against him like some other people do. And when it comes to Josh Allen first, I want to say this. He won the MVP last year and he deserved the MVP. It's not that I think he didn't deserve it. When it comes to what I have to say about Lamar Jackson. I mean, the way Josh Allen's able to throw the ball 70 yards down the field with just the flick of his wrist, he proved to people that he can operate an offense at a high level that doesn't feature Stephon Diggs last year. I think he's the second best runner of the football at the quarterback position, right behind Lamar Jackson. He's a very accurate quarterback. For me, he'd be the third best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not holding the playoff losses against him. I'm not using the fact that he has won a few more playoff games to say he's better than Lamar Jackson. For me, he'd come in as the third best.
Hey, where you got Justin Herbert on this list, by the way?
I'm at number 10.
So cataclysmically melting down in the playoffs is an issue, except when it's not. This past year was not the best example of it, and you're going to make me talk poorly about Lamar Jackson when I really don't want to start talking about him this way because I think he is a special player. But Lamar's worst game of the season is consistently his last game, which is not something you can say about Josh Allen. He has never put two playoff games together in a row of note. And more often than not, when called upon the biggest moments, he has failed the Baltimore Ravens. You can point the finger at other directions as well, but when you're the quarterback playing at a sub-MVP, subpar level in the biggest moments, you get a lot of the blame. Allen, on the other hand, you can make the argument he gets better in the playoffs compared to the regular season. Fantastic performances against the Chiefs in 2 of the past 3 years. Had his stumbles against the Bengals in the division round of the playoffs, but still, we'll go light the world on fire in the wild card. We'll light it on fire in the division round. We'll play very well in the conference championship and lose to factors beyond his control. The loss to the Chiefs from Lamar Jackson was the most damaging, where his offense goes out there and scores 7 points, where he's driving down the field, the opportunity to make it a one-score game late, and throws the ball into quadra coverage. Those are things just inconceivable for Josh Allen's playoff experience. If Allen played that way in the playoffs, he would have never won a playoff game. He may have picked off the Steelers or the Broncos one of these years. He would have never made it past the divisional round. Lamar has benefited more from the team around him than Josh Allen, and still has failed to perform in the highest moments.
No one is going to remember Josh Allen for winning a wild card game or divisional game.
No, they're going to remember him lighting the world on fire against the Chiefs and losing because his defense couldn't stop the Chiefs for 13 seconds. That's what they're going to remember Josh Allen for. They're probably going to remember him for a Super Bowl at some point down the line here too, but
when it comes to Lamar Jackson, and this is a list for 2025, largely based on what they accomplished in 2024. I'm not saying, I think Josh Allen was deserving of the award, but I also think Lamar Jackson was slightly more deserving. 41 touchdowns, 4,000 passing yards, 900 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. The statistical argument was there when they played the Bills early in the season. They blew the Bills out of the water. When they played them in the playoffs, you mentioned, his worst game comes in the playoffs. It wasn't even as bad as you make it out to seem.
It was the only game all year had multiple turnovers. That was his worst game.
He threw for over 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had those 2 turnovers, but the team that you said supports him so much had Zay Flowers fumble what would have been a scoring drive away. Had Mark Andrews drop a 2-point conversion. So yes, did he make major mistakes in this game? 100%. But the team that you said is supporting him so much also had 2 major mistakes that cost the Ravens points. And in that game, Josh Allen apparently plays so good in the playoffs, he threw for 127 yards. He did not beat the Ravens. The Ravens were the better team, and they just made more mistakes.
Yeah, you don't mention that defense, which was much maligned the first 11 weeks, contained the highest scoring offense in the NFL largely. That's half the game, which Allen has not benefited from, but Lamar has in the playoffs. And you can minimize the passing yards. Josh Allen was elite on the ground of that game. Consistently picked up 3rd and longs with his legs. Kept the chains moving. He would have had more passing yards if Lamar Jackson had not given him 2 short fields to go drive down and score on with his turnovers. If you want to make the argument that in a vacuum, Lamar was better in that playoff game, sure, fine. I will not begrudge you overly of that. The overall body of work between Josh Allen in the playoffs and Lamar Jackson in the playoffs is night and day different. And I don't think anyone in their right mind would argue that, except someone who is putting their fingers in their ears and saying, la la la, I like Lamar Jackson's Week 8 highlights against the Bengals where he hits a really cool spin move or stiff arm on someone who retired this offseason. There's no good argument for Lamar being better than Josh Allen if you actually value winning games.
Josh Allen doesn't have any conference championship trophies. He's won a bunch of
Neither
wild
does
card
Lamar.
games, and Lamar has been the better regular season quarterback. So I think when you have more playoff success, but you don't have any playoff hardware, I don't think that is as good of an argument to make a delineation between the two.
In 13 games, Josh Allen has thrown for 3,359 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. I'm putting this in a way you can understand just raw stats, by the way. In 8 games, Lamar's thrown for 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, without factoring in the fumbles, without factoring in his legs are clearly diminished once you get into the postseason. You can just hand wave it away, but when one guy's got an entire season of playoff success, far more playoff wins than the other guy, and you can say, I don't hold it against them, they don't win the Super Bowl. Clearly you do. If you're just going to ignore the bodies of work and say, well, yeah, neither have rings, so the playoffs don't matter, I don't know what to tell you.
When making a delineation between the two doesn't matter as much when neither of them have playoff hardware.
Who would you rather have starting a playoff game for you, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen?
Lamar Jackson next year.
Notice how you had to fight that one out, by the way. You had to trip over yourself.
Josh Allen has been more successful in the past in the playoffs.
But this year's different, right?
This is the year.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for early Super Bowl predictions.
If a comet strikes Buffalo, takes out Mahomes as well with the tail end of it, and let's say the Broncos don't get on their plane to go fly to Baltimore and play the Ravens, then yeah, I think Lamar's got a pretty good shot of winning the Super Bowl. And of course, if the Eagles don't come out of the NFC. Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes, and make of his regular season what you will with a bad offensive line with a very injured receiving room. His best game of the season came in the AFC Championship game where he just fringe fried a Buffalo Bills defense who was missing their cornerback too, found the area of weakness, continued to exploit it over and over and over again. Because that's what Patrick Mahomes does. He finds where you're weakest and will just go at you all day. Sometimes your defensive line can't contain the pocket. He can just roll out, sit near the hash mark for 5-10 seconds, and launch something downfield to an NFL receiver who will always find a way to get open if given a ton of time. Sometimes he needs to be consistent. He needs to go short, pick you apart on the out routes, on the little slants, on drags. He'll do that. Sometimes he has to find you over the middle to beat your defense. He'll do that. Sometimes your safeties just cannot keep up with Tyreek Hill. He'll find Tyreek Hill in 13 seconds. He'll find Travis Kelce in a hole in his own defense. Whatever it takes to beat you, Patrick Mahomes is capable of doing. I don't think the Eagles with the Chiefs roster were capable of being beaten in the Super Bowl. That is the disparity in talent between the Eagles and the Chiefs last year by the time they played each other. It was an unwinnable situation, which maybe Mahomes didn't perform that well in, but when you've got 3 Super Bowl rings, you've got Super Bowl MVPs out the wazoo, I have faith you'll be able to bounce back. I have faith that maybe that was just a one-off due to a roster standpoint. Mahomes, clearly the most accomplished quarterback, clearly the best quarterback, the winningest quarterback, however you want to put it, whatever. You can categorize Mahomes how you'd like, but if you have anywhere but one, you're looking for engagement.
Well, I think I would directly just to last year's Super Bowl, I do think he played poorly. I think it's one of the worst coach games we've seen from Andy Reid and that Chiefs offense. They didn't seem to quite be ready in the slightest for the Eagles defense. I think the other Super Bowl they lost against the Buccaneers, that fell more on just not having an offensive line.
I would argue the Eagles defensive line did better than the Buccaneers defensive line did in those Super Bowls.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs didn't have any offensive tackles that Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were starting a left guard at offensive tackle and Jawan Taylor at right tackle. That's pretty comparable in terms of not having tackles. That, by the way, worst contract in the NFL, Jawan Taylor, outside of Watson, but they've got an all-time anchor on the right side of the offensive line.
Regardless, when you've been to 3 straight Super Bowls, you have 3 rings over the course of your career, and no one else has really done anything close to that during your time in the NFL, no one deserves to be ranked higher than you. A down year for Patrick Mahomes is another quarterback's best season. And you said it already, Patrick Mahomes just finds a way to win. He finds your weakness and he does what it takes to win, even if that means he's only going to throw for 170 yards that game and hand the ball off more than he throws it. So the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are dedicated to solely winning. He doesn't care as much about statistics statistics anymore, I think, while they are still solid. And it would be nice to see him win throwing for 40 touchdowns again and winning the MVP. It could happen this year with an improved receiver room if we get a healthy Rashee Rice back on the field. Xavier Worthy improves even more in year 2. So maybe that high-flying offense comes back next season. That is yet to be seen.
I'll go ahead and spoil it for you. The tackle play, it ain't coming back, son. There is not going to be enough time for that offense to fly high in the pocket.
Josh Simmons, maybe he,
With his nose ring, come on now. Josh Simmons is not going to be a good blindside tackle for Mahomes, I fear. It's over already.
Because he has a nose ring.
And a cataclysmic knee injury is coming off, but...
I do think the gap is shortened a little bit between him, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen, if one of them wins the Super Bowl, as far as like the current best quarterback in the NFL goes.
I mean, if both those guys replicate their regular season success, which they had this year, Allen maintains his level of play, Lamar greatly increases his level of play in the playoffs, they win the AFC, they got to beat Mahomes to do it. They beat Mahomes in the playoffs, go to the Super Bowl, and then win that against a super talented Eagles, Vikings, Lions.
Just throw the Vikings in there.
I'm picking the best rosters. One of the far superior NFC rosters. The 49ers somehow get back to form. One of the super teams with a substandard quarterback. If they do that, then yeah, sure. They can be in the conversation, but no one else is near Mahomes right now. And even then, I don't think it'd really close the gap that much. Because you can't in good faith tell me in 2026 off a Josh Allen Super Bowl MVP, you're going to take him over Mahomes still. There's too much lingering pain from the playoff losses to Patrick Mahomes coming, even if they aren't Allen's fault.
I think the gap when it comes to current best quarterback in the NFL, certainly when it comes to over the course of their careers, who's had the better career and who's the better quarterback, all time relative to the two.
Unless Mahomes' arm falls off, I don't see a scenario you can ask me, hey, would you rather have X quarterback or Patrick Mahomes to win a game for you? And that quarterback's not named Tom Brady, that the answer isn't Patrick Mahomes, regardless of how good any of these guys are on a year-to-year basis.
That has been our top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. What are your top 10 quarterbacks looking like? Let us know down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.